I want to know that everyone appreciates how much care and patience you've taken in listening. It's clear and it's obvious, and I thank you for doing that. There are people, though, who think that the prosecutor's job is just to convict people. And that's just not true. It's our job to present you with the facts and tell the truth and to be advocates, and telling the truth sometimes involves showing you things no one wants to see. Sometimes our job requires to produce evidence and testimony and pictures and images that we don't want to show you and no one wants to see them. But that's our job. That's my job. And it's not our job to sanitize, even though that would be easier. It's my job, and it's Mr. Keith's job, to present all the evidence to you and explain why we think the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Mark Keith told you when this trial started that any number of tragically small efforts could have saved the lives of 4 kids. That it was foreseeable and it was preventable. And the evidence presented in the last 5 days has proven that, ladies and gentlemen. James Crumbley was presented with the easiest, most glaring opportunities to prevent the deaths of these 4 students. And he did nothing. He did nothing. He did nothing over and over and over again. And the evidence shows that. This case is not about holding James Crumbley responsible for what his son did. Again, if he knew exactly what his son was going to do, he'd be charged with murder. It's about his legal duty and his failure to perform it, or to perform it in a negligent way. You heard the testimony of Molly Darnell. She told you that the first thing she saw when she looked through the window and saw the gun being raised towards her was that there was no orange tip, which she had learned previously, she doesn't remember where, meant it's a real gun. That he aimed the gun at chest level and he locked eyes with her, and the bullet landed 6 inches from her heart. Ed Wagrowski, who was a member of the computer crimes unit in the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. He told you about what forensic evaluation of cell phone analysis is. He was qualified as an expert. He described his involvement and observations at the school that day. And he told you that he doesn't really respond to incidents like this. He was in computer crimes. No one comes into the office and says you have to respond to a critical incident, except that day. And you could tell that had a great emotional impact on him. He watched hours and hours and hours of videos and images of that school that day to put together the evidence that we were able to present to you today and through the past 5 days. He reviewed all of it, and he described and then showed you the path and the camera angles of the shooter's path through the school that day. He also presented the messages between Jennifer and James Crumbley and the messages between their son and his friend. He told you that there were over 20,000 text messages between the shooter and that one friend he had. He also told you in 1 year there were only 65 text messages sent between James Crumbley and his father. James Crumbley, who had either worked at home, was in between jobs, or had DoorDash. James Crumbley, who was the person he dropped his son at school every single morning. He told you that the image of the gun that the shooter shared with his dad was deleted. We played the voicemail from the school on November 29th from Pam Fine, talking about his son searching bullets. He presented evidence that he was aware of that because Jennifer told him about it. She texted, "Did he tell you about what happened at school?" James responded, "Yes." He shared with you the defendant's communications on November 30th of 2021. And important to note, he was able to show you exactly the path Some of you are probably surprised and a little concerned about how much somebody can actually know what you're doing, but it's a lot. And we know exactly where he was, what he did, who he talked to, and so we could trace his steps, which turns out to be some of the most critical evidence in this trial. He showed you through the DoorDash search warrant returns the locations of what James Crumbley was doing from the moment he left the school that morning until the moment he called 911. And only after he learned that there was an active shooter at the school did James Crumbley go home and look for the gun. Even though from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock he had 4 DoorDash pickups and passed his house many times. He was within minutes, many times. And you heard the 911 call by James Crumbley about 14 minutes after he arrived home and discovered that the gun was missing. Bob could tell us, he testified, and we showed you images of the hallway in that school when he processed the scene. And you saw pictures of that. And he told you that a total of 50 fired and unfired cartridges were recovered. And that the shooter fired 32 rounds and 18 were unfired. And we know where he got those 50. You saw that. It's when he pointed them out across the counter when he's with his mom standing a little bit behind her and said, 2. And you also know that James Crumbley knew that because when he was at the substation and they asked about where this gun was, who owns the gun, where's the ammo, he described it as he bought 2 boxes, referring to his son. Bob Catellis told you that those are rods placed in where bullet holes have penetrated that glass. And as you can see, when you saw other images, this was somebody who knew how to use a firearm. And Special Agent Brandon told you that's immediately what he observed. Those are shots, if landing on a human being, would kill them. Cami Batt explained in detail what her requirement is and what she did that day, and that she knew James Crumbley because in June he came in and he bought 2 more guns, one for himself, which the evidence showed because he told Jennifer how much did your gun cost? It was $300, and then there was another gun, which was his son's, a Derringer, and you saw the Derringer. She told you that she also sold him the 9mm on the 26th. That his son was present with him. He stated he's had his eye on that gun. She told you that they sell a locking mechanism with each gun they sell, that he was provided the trigger lock statement, and that there was a cable lock with the Sig Sauer when he bought it, and it was provided to him, and the ATF pamphlet solely in existence to just warn people, once again, the dangers of firearms with minors. And she told you that regardless of what kind of mechanism they provide, they always try to provide a tool with anyone who purchases a firearm to make it safe. Sergeant Joe Bryan testified and introduced the video, the recorded statements of James in the substation.